contested turns kill hatches pretty fast.
Yes, they do.
Shocked.
So what do you think? Is it even worth my time to continue trying to stay in this game? Or should we move
I don't
on
think
to
you're gonna be able to win.
some viewer mail? All right. All right. So that kind of gives us an idea, at least, for how we need to be approaching our ZvZ from a fundamental point of view. What do you say, Rhett?
Yeah. I think that last game was a pretty good game. I mean, you could have done a little bit better in scouting and not missing his Ling attacks. And but I think he played it pretty well, to be honest. And it really gives you an idea like how much you can drone at certain times, and
Yeah.
also the mid game he played it pretty good, like with infestors. He didn't use bird infestor that game, but he showed in this game where you beat me that that's a really strong strategy.
Yes, he did. So thank you to Jay Echo for the games. He's a great player and an awesome guy. So thanks for coming on. We appreciate it. So now I'm going to move and take some questions from you guys. I've asked y'all to email questions to the stream, and wow, y'all have done so in droves. So Rhett, if you're ready, man, I'm just going to start throwing them your way.
I'm ready.
All right. In ZvZ, the game often develops into a two-base Roach war where upgrades are key. However, sooner or later, both players tend to find themselves with a slight gas surplus, and the possibility of a new tech opens up. So my question is this: Hydralisks or infestors?
That's a hard question. I prefer infestors. However, on a map like Crouch Station, where you have the two rocks that people kill, and then you just go back and forth there, that's like such a narrow area. On a map like that, I would like a Hydra rush, like a Roach into fast Hydras, because that's like a perfect example of where Roaches, the range just doesn't cut it, so you're gonna have like a front line of Roaches, and then the ones behind that would never shoot. So in a situation like that, Hydras can be really nice. However, in general, on more open maps, I would definitely go infestors.
Okay. The +1 ranged attack is a killer upgrade when the opponent has a lot of Zerglings. But how many Zerglings should he have to justify delaying a layer in favor of the upgrade?
I would never look at Zerglings and think, okay, I need the +2 upgrade right now. I think Zerglings are really bad once it gets to the mid game with lots of Roaches. Like those Zerglings are just never really do much except counters and small backstabs on the third base or something like that. So I would just get upgrades because I want to be ahead of my opponent in upgrades. I would never like look at Lings and think like, okay, I need the +2 because that's so many Lings.
Okay. Rhett, what graphic settings do you play on, and what resolution do you use, and what kind of sound settings do you play with?
I play everything on low except let me check, the texture quality, that's on ultra for me because I think it looks nicer. And then I have in the variables file that's in your StarCraft 2 documents folder, I put the shadows and the shaders, or whatever they're called, I put them on, I think 0. That's like a medium graphic setting. I do that because you can then see cloaked units like DTs and Banshees better.
I see.
As for my sound, sound effects are on, interface sounds are on, and then yeah, I don't use ambient sounds.
Cool. Is there a reason why you choose to play on low graphic settings?
Well, when I first got the game, my computer wasn't that good, so I was kind of forced to. And then after a while, I got a better computer, and I tried switching to medium and high, but I got so used to the low graphics, and I felt like everything was more clear to see. So yeah, I just kept using low.
Cool. Is it ever safe to get a third in ZvZ before infestors?
Yes, it's definitely almost always safe to get a third before infestors, especially if you're not on very close positions. On close positions, I would be hesitant to get a third, like Metalopolis close positions, because you never really have time to drone it up anyways, because you're always going back and forth, and it's usually really intense, aggressive games. So, but if you're like far away, or if you've hit like a stalemate in a macro game, then I wouldn't wait for infestors to get a third base.
All right. Ret, I've had quite some I can't talk today, man. You woke me up early and I swore my tongue is swollen.
I'm sorry.
I have had quite some success in mid-diamond with saturating one gas and the minerals on one base, only going roaches, and then after that, teching to speed roaches. And this is the terrible question. In other words, is roach baneling viable in ZvZ, is what he's trying to say.
But I thought he didn't go banelings. So
Well, he's apparently adding them after layer.
how does he do that with one gas?
I have no idea. Like I said,
Two hatch.
it's a terrible question.
Yeah. I think Roach bailing is viable if your opponent's going Roach mass Speedling. If he doesn't go mass Speedling, then you don't need bailings. But what he was talking about, getting 2 base speed Roaches, that just sounds to me like a really strong timing attack.
Mhm.
So I would say that is very viable. I don't think you need the bailings unless there's a lot of Speedlings.
Mhm. So we asked this in the course of our play earlier today, but we're going to come back to it just to revisit it. Ret, how do you check on your queen energy? What's your mechanic for this? And is your larva vomiting engraved? Is it just instinctive, or is it still something you have to be mindful of?
I never really look at my queen's energy unless I think like, hey, maybe I should get some tumors to have spare energy, or I want to use like a transfusion. But as for the queen larva injection, I have my hatches on 5, 1 queen on 6, 1 on 7, and then if I get a third one, it's on 8, and I just go back and forth like double 6, double 7, inject,
Mm-hmm.
throughout the game. And since I played it so much, it's pretty natural for me. Like I don't have to think about that. I'm not perfect with it either, but it's like an automatism.
Right. When going 15 hatch, like we've been doing today, and like we also talked about today, but just to revisit it, when 15 hatching, what's the best way to counter these big 1 base Speedling pushes?
That's a good question. The problem here is that if it's 1 hatch Speedling bailing, you need roaches. So then I would say do the pool roach warren just to be safe. However, if they skip the bailings and it's pure Speedlings, then roaches in small numbers can be a little bit vulnerable. So then you just have to make sure that the roaches are on your ramp. You don't get caught out of position with any of your roaches, like get them surrounded and stuff. And you just got to try to stay close to your ramp and make the surface area where the Zergling is going to attack you as small as possible. And like once you get like 10, 15 roaches, then you should feel pretty comfortable against Lings.
All right. Got a lot of repeat questions in here, so I apologize to people on the stream if your question doesn't get asked, but most of these are repeats. Here's another one. What do you think about the not so mighty Ultralisk? Because I feel it can be so much more better if it could walk over ground units and attack easier.
I wish it could walk over ground units. That sounds pretty awesome. But yeah, as of right now, I would never ever use an Ultralisk without infestors because they are so slow, clumsy, and big. I feel like they can be really useful, especially against like big Colossus ball armies.
Mm-hmm.
But you do need to get a fungal off on the army so you can actually walk up to it and surround it. If you're using ultras without infestors, then whether it's Terran or Protoss, you're just gonna get kited, and ultras are never gonna be cost effective. So I think ultras are nice, but always get 2 or 3 infestors with them.
So I guess we could probably talk about this more when we talk about ZVP in a few days, but it sounds like you might be experimenting with some Ultralisk play in your ZVP. Is that something that you think actually might have some viability?
Yeah, I've been having some trouble with you know, the large Protoss balls, like 200 armies, where
Right.
it's just like 6 Colossus and a shitload of Stalkers, and my roaches just melt. So I've been trying, you know, all sorts of different combinations, and Ultras has definitely been one of the combinations that I've been experimenting with, and that I still need to experiment more with.
Mm-hmm.
But so far, I feel like if you do get the good fungal, you do get a good surround, then it can be very effective.
What about, how do you feel about these bailing drops that we sometimes see in ZVP?
One of the other things that I need to experiment with, because I've seen it be really effective, um, but I think as more people are doing it, Protoss players are gonna recognize it like, oh shit, there's like 5 overlords coming to us, my army is gonna be Banelings, and then they're just gonna be able to spread out. So, you know, I think it can work really well, but it also can backfire and not be worth the minerals and gas you invested into it.
All right. We've already answered that question. These are not particularly ZvZ focused, but that's okay. Let's talk about Thor drops and tank drops on Lost Temple. You know, as Zerg players, we both know it's pretty difficult to deal with. What's your preferred way of handling tanks and Thors on your cliff?
My preferred way would be a Roach opening, because I feel like a Thor opening with a bunch of SCVs on there, possibly making turrets, negates a muta counter pretty well, unless you get it really early. But Roaches are really nice, especially now with the 4 range. You can make 2 spines, like right next to your hatchery at your natural, and then the Thor, to shoot the hatchery, has to get in range of the spines. And then when he wants to shoot the spines, the Roaches can move up to the cliff and actually attack the Thor. So that way you can buy a lot of time until drop and speed finishes.
That's actually different from what we've seen a lot on broadcasting games, where people just put those spines right next to the cliff. You're talking about leaving some space there, and it actually works out.
Yeah, you gotta put them right next to your hatchery. That way the Roaches become a good counter to the Thor on the cliff.
Cool. And you know, there was a GSL game we saw last season. I forget who was playing, but it was LT Thor drop, and then he just kind of used Roaches with Burrow and Tunneling Claws to counter the Terran main.
Yeah, that was Lenok. That was an awesome game.
It was awesome. I liked it a lot. All right, let me see if I can find some more good questions for us here as they continue piling in a million at a time. Question about third queens. Rhett, do you always get a third queen on 2 base, or are you trying to rush for a third base?
In ZvZ, I would always get a third base before a third queen, because I don't care about creep spread, like I said earlier. Against Terran, I would always get the third queen, because creep spread is extremely important against Terran, because ideally you do want to have creep when their first attack comes, so you can your units can actually kill something.
Right.
Against Protoss, I like the third queen, but I don't feel it's as necessary as against Terran, so it just depends on my mood against Protoss.
Really? I've been experimenting with a lot of extra queens early in the game against Protoss because of the growing popularity of these Stargate builds.
That's right. Yeah, you should. Yeah, if you aren't sure what they're doing, you should always get the third and possibly 4th queen against Protoss, actually, because of the Stargate openings. I forgot about those.
Hi, Rhett. We've been talking about 15 hatch today. Do you think it's still viable on Blistering Sands and Jungle Basin?
Yeah, I definitely think it's viable. In fact, today I played a game against someone in a tournament, and I predicted they would 15 hatch, so I went 9 pool on Blistering Sands, and I actually lost because he didn't cancel his hatchery.